Alright, so let's talk security. Since Firebase is a serverless infrastructure, most of your application is going to be written client-side. That means that you're going to be using UI frameworks such as Ionic, Angular, React, or whatever it is you want to use. We can add client-side validation, but we also need to secure our database in the server. For that, Firebase let us use an expressive language called Firebase Security Rules. So we're going to go into our console, and in here in the database, we are in Firestore, we are going to click on the Rules tab. Here we can see the security rules. We started the application in test mode. What that means is that it's going to let you have your database completely open for 30 days. So it's going to first look and match every single document in the database, and it's going to allow you to read or write to that path if the time you're doing it is less than March 22nd. That's 1 month from today. For the purposes of this example, we are going to use the same object we were using to store movies. We are only going to add one new property, that's the added by, and that added by is going to be the user ID. Now we can see how security rules start to work. First, and this is something I like to do, I like to remove this global match because I don't want path of my database to be open like that, or I don't want those rules to apply everywhere. I want to be explicit about what I do. So here I'm just going to list the collections that I'm using. As you saw in the past, it's just the movies collection, or we can see it here. I just have the movies collection. So if I lock down the movies collection and in the future I add a new collection, we are going to have permission errors because you are not going to be able to read or write to that collection. So just to keep in mind, that's something you need to do. Whenever you add a new collection, you are going to have to also create security rules for it. Okay, we are going to add the rules for our movies collection. In here, we are saying, okay, let's match the movies collection with a movie. Movie is here in curly braces, meaning this is a variable. So for movies slash ID1 or movies slash ID2, all of this is going to apply. This is just telling us that it's going to apply for all of the movies inside of that collection. Now, let's go back into the data because I want to show you something. In here, you can start another collection. This is called a sub-collection. And basically, it's a collection inside another collection. You can think of it like if you have the movie here and you want to add a list of all of the theaters where the movie is displayed, you would create a collection called theaters inside of this, and then you would add just the theaters where that movie is displaying. If we leave our security rules like this, whatever you try to read or write from subcollections is going to throw an error because you don't have permissions for that. So in here, you would need to create another match rule for every subcollection you have. Or Firebase has this handy helper where you can do movie slash document equals star star, and this is going to tell it, okay, you are going to go into the document and these rules are going to apply for any subcollection inside of those documents. And in here we have the most basic rules at the moment. We're just saying we're going to allow read or write operations all the time. We can also separate this. So for example, instead of having here allow read write operations, we can do allow read in the first line, and then we can do allow write in the second. And we can say, okay, this is going to be public document, so basically anyone can look at our movies, but to write, I want to create a different condition. And that condition is that I only want authenticated users to be able to write movies to the database. So I can say, okay, let's allow the write operation if the auth variable inside of the request is different from null. So if there's no auth variable in the request, it means that the user is not authenticated, and I'm going to throw here a permissions error. We can get a little more granular with these security rules. So for example, instead of having allow write, we can actually say, okay, let's do this And instead of allow write, we're going to allow create. We are going to allow update, or we are going to allow delete. And we can have different security rules for each one of these. And then we can start working with the rules. For example, we want any authenticated user to be able to create documents in our database. We want to say, hey, as long as you're logged in, you can create movies. But when it comes to update, we have a different requirement. We want only the user that created the movie to be able to update it. So in here, we can add another condition. We have a property called added by in the object, and the added by is the user's ID. So we can say, okay, we want this user to be authenticated, but also we want their user ID to be equal to resource dot data dot added by. And here's what's going on. We are comparing the user ID that's coming in the request with the user ID property in the document. Resource is the actual document we are updating in the database. And data is the data for that document, so title, rating, image, and added by. For delete, we are going to do exactly the same. We want that only the users that created those movies are able to delete them. And you can see we have, okay, now everyone can read, only authenticated users can create, but to update or delete a movie, then the same person that created that movie is the one that can do it. And when you start working like this, you start seeing that there's some code that just repeats itself. For example, we are here checking if the user is authenticated and if it's the same user that created that document. We can extract that code here with a function. So we can say function is creator user, and we can say, okay, let's return whatever we have here. And now inside of here, we can actually say is creator user. And that way we can refactor also the update. And basically, whenever a document is being updated or deleted, we are calling the isCreatorUser function that's going to say, okay, I'm going to check if the request.auth is different from null, and if it's the same user, I'm going to return true, so I'm going to let the users write to the database.